said was a day from hell. They were flying from Burma to China. They received a radio warning called a red alert, which confirmed that there was enemy aircraft in the area. Perry told his co-pilot that he was going to explore the mountains, and he turned to the north. His only other two options would probably have led him to the enemy. He flew into the high country, staying lower than the mountaintops. He returned to base when he got an all clear. When he got back, he found that two of the planes that had left before him were missing. One finally shows up, badly damaged, riddled with holes from the Japanese Zeros. The other, with a close friend of Perry's, who had a new child, by the way, did not survive the attack. The bravery and heroism he displayed earned him the Distinguished Flying Cross. Perry made no mention of this in his memoirs. Now, I have known Perry for 35 years, and I didn't know about it until recently when I saw it in his office. The award is given in recognition of heroism and extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight. Doesn't that sound official? The first recipient of the award was Charles Lindbergh. It is the oldest military aviation award. Perry survived 56 round trips over the hump. And because of his contribution and the contribution of others, over 1.5 million of the enemy who would otherwise have been battling our troops elsewhere were tied up. He was well deserving of the DFC. After his return from Asia in 1944, he had several duty stations stateside, choosing to come to Stockton Field, where he had been in 1941. I say choose because the Army gave him the option to go to Florida. Aren't we lucky that he chose California? Shortly after arriving in Stockton in July of 1945, a fellow flyer, buddy of his, who was from Stockton, tells Perry that his mother wants him to meet a young lady. Turns out to be Eileen Boulder. Perry is invited to dinner, and Eileen is not there. She's on a date. But she has her date drive her over and to meet Perry at the friend's mother's house. They exchange phone numbers. She goes back on her date. Perry's interested, so he gives Eileen a call and asks her to join him at the officers' club for a dance on the weekend. But Eileen turns him down. She's going away for the weekend with Dawn. Now, Perry says, I better work fast. So he said, well, how about we go to dinner the next night? And she accepts. It turns out that Dawn, spelled D-A-W-N, is not a problem. And they married in November of 1945. Now, Perry's memoirs end at the moment he was discharged from the military. I asked him why he didn't write a third volume, and he told me it was too personal. It was complicated. I'm not going to cover the next 68 years of his life in the same detail, and I can hear at least several of you say, thank God. I think we have already learned, however, a good deal about Perry. He is clearly a product of the pioneer spirit. He feels there is much he can accomplish if he works hard. He is strongly self-reliant, having lost his father at a young age. He worked his way through high school and college during the Depression in a retail job and falls back on that in his later professional career, the furniture business. He considered being a pilot for United, but Eileen was not keen on him spending so much time with pretty young stewardesses. So he settled finally into working in the furniture business. Eileen says he got numerous books and studied all he could to make him more knowledgeable about all facets of the business. He was eventually invited to become a partner in Jordan and Bowen, a prominent furniture store in Stockton, which later became Jordan and Andrews. Perry described his partner, Rollin Jordan, as the brother he never had. He credited Rollin with making a wise decision to purchase the building that they were renting on March Lane near Pacific. Even after closing down the Ethan Allen store in the early 1980s, Rollin, Perry, and recently Ron Bernasconi have managed and developed that property. Sadly, Rollin is no longer with us. It probably goes without saying that when one reaches Perry's age, most or many of his friends have passed away. Thankfully, a lot are still here, his younger friends. I have already told you, I think a couple of times, that I met Perry 34 plus years ago as he was transitioning to a new life. One of the most striking impressions I had of him was that he was very dignified. The word dignity resonated with me very recently when we met with hospice. They spoke of wanting to protect his dignity as he approached the end of life. That word was so descriptive of the man I knew. I asked his niece, Pat, for examples of the dignified Perry she knew, and she said it was difficult to point to one or two things because that was his persona. That was just the way he carried himself. And I strongly suspect that that trait is part of what made him successful in the furniture business. He always dressed well. My casual attire is jeans and a sweatshirt, but you would never catch Perry in that attire. Even in Meadowwood, the skilled nursing facility here at O'Connor Woods, he wore slacks and a long-sleeve polo shirt. The nurses described him as handsome. Speaking of handsome, I just went through a photo album just a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact, and there are numerous photos of him going back to his high school days. He honestly had movie star good looks. One photo of him, I swear, looks like James Dean. My wife Sharon said that she has always thought that Perry resembled Clint Eastwood. Eileen, you were a lucky woman. His mannerisms reflected his dignity. He always stood tall with his head back to the end of his life. Perhaps a characteristic which carried over from his military days. He had a ready smile and never ruffled demeanor, except when he missed a short putt. Sharon has been around him for over 60 years, and she may well cause me great bodily injury for making reference to her age, but she says that she can never remember him saying an unkind word, a word in anger, or any foul language. And likewise, I cannot remember a harsh word or him swearing. That is, until recently, and I will get to that in a moment. Maybe his poker or golf buddies will say something different, but that is our memory. Perry's mind was keen and sharp to the very end. He had a very inquisitive mind. He and I exchanged books and novels on history. We exchanged literature on religion. He was fascinated by geology. He remained engaged with friends. He had a regular group called the Irregulars, go figure, and he had 2 poker groups, which he joined and went to on a weekly basis into his 90s. We moved to Stockton about 8 years ago, and I was amazed that Perry was playing golf 3 times a week, walking with a push cart, even in the summer heat. He only stopped doing this about 3 years ago. Another reason he is my hero is that he maintained this level of activity so long. Of course, I knew Perry was a golfer, but I didn't realize until I read his memoirs and talked with his friends what an athlete he was. I've mentioned he played both ways on the high school football team. There was a newspaper clipping of him that I came across with him showing him, and it has in quotes, star guard on the basketball team. He was on the boxing team in high school and boxed in the intramural boxing tournaments in college, winning one tournament. He got pummeled in the next one and decided that wasn't a good sport. He made the college track team, running the high hurdles, obviously in college. He was a skilled horseman. We talked a little bit about that. During World War II, on a layover in Cairo, he rented, after much haggling with the owner, an Arabian horse. He convinced the owner that he could ride bareback because he was, after all, a Wyoming cowboy. He then rode the beautiful horse, bareback, to the pyramids. He was also skilled at ballroom dancing. I saw that demonstrated at my daughter's wedding. Perry and Eileen were the last ones on the floor, gliding around the floor, having been awarded the prize for being the longest married couple at the wedding. Here in Stockton, Perry actually probably played more tennis than golf during his furniture business years. He and Eileen belonged to the West Lane Tennis Club, and he played during his lunch breaks at work often. During the retail business years, it was hard for him to get out to play golf, so it was mostly a vacation activity. On one summer vacation trip with Sharon's mom and stepfather, Vern, who told me this story, Perry shot a 73, which, trust me, is good, at Edgewood, a very challenging course on the shores of Lake Tahoe. It was striking to Vern because he knew Perry was playing frequently at the time. So, having developed the coordination of an athlete over a lifetime, it didn't surprise me when he demonstrated that athleticism days before his death. I transported Perry in his wheelchair to all of his doctor visits once he got to Meadowood. On his very last visit, when his doctor told him he was being moved to hospice, I drove him back to Meadowood. Perry would typically, when we went to doctor visits or errands, would open the door but sit in his seat while I removed and assembled his wheelchair at the back of the SUV. On this occasion, unbeknownst to me, Perry decided to get out and stand by his door. At least that was his intent. I was in the middle of assembling the chair when I heard him, calmly mind you, say, "Will, imagine my shock when I looked to see this 94-year-old invalid hanging from the door, holding up his falling body. Gotten out, put his hands on the door must have moved on him, and he tore it and hung on to the door with his leg up in the air. He must have lost his balance, obviously, and grabbed the door. I quickly got to him and stood him up. I think it took a coordinated athlete to execute that maneuver to save himself from a potentially catastrophic fall under those circumstances. We got Perry in his chair. Perry and I got him in his chair, and he collected himself, and he said to me, "If you don't mind, oh bleep." Insert the common term for human excrement. I am nearing the end. Perry asked me to give his eulogy and put it in written instructions, actually, many years ago. In discussing what he wanted, he did tell me that he wanted me to conduct it without a lot of reference to religion.